There is a moment, and if you know it, you feel it in your chest, when a woman who was never supposed to wear a crown walks into a room wearing one. She was a secretary, a shop assistant, a swimmer, a journalist, a marketing executive who went for a drink with friends at a Sydney pub and ended up talking to a man who introduced himself simply as Fred. She was an actress from Philadelphia who met a prince at a photo shoot and changed the definition of what a princess could be. These women did not inherit their place in history. They earned it through years of waiting, through public scrutiny that would have broken most people, through the quiet, relentless work of becoming someone the world had not yet imagined. And the jewels they wore, they were never just jewels. They were verdicts. They were the moment a dynasty said, "You belong here now." This is the story of 8 women who walked through that door, and the extraordinary pieces of history they carried on their heads, around their necks, and on their fingers when they did. Grace Kelly, the original. We begin where the story of the modern commoner queen truly begins. Grace Kelly was born in Philadelphia in 1929, the daughter of a self-made Irish-American millionaire. She became an Oscar-winning actress, Rear Window, To Catch a Thief. And in 1955, she traveled to the Cannes Film Festival, where a photo shoot was arranged at the Prince's Palace in Monaco. There, she met Prince Rainier III, the bachelor ruler of a tiny but luminous principality on the Mediterranean. Their courtship was conducted largely away from public view. When the engagement was announced in early 1956, Rainier initially proposed with a Cartier Eternity band set with alternating rubies and diamonds in Monaco's red and white colors. A few months later, he quietly upgraded it. What replaced it became one of the most famous engagement rings in history, a 10.48-carat emerald-cut diamond flanked by 2 baguette diamonds on a platinum band, also by Cartier. Grace wore it in her final film, High Society, turning the jewel into both a cinematic prop and a royal symbol simultaneously. Prince Rainier, by every account, wanted to ensure his future wife would love it. She did. She wore it for the rest of her life. The religious wedding in Monaco's St. Nicholas Cathedral on the 19th of April, 1956, was broadcast to an estimated 30 million viewers, an almost incomprehensible number for the era. Grace did not wear a tiara that day. She wore a lace and pearl cap, delicate and personal, and the diamond on her finger caught the light of every camera in Europe. She retired from acting after her marriage and devoted herself to charitable work, helping transform Monaco into a hub of culture as well as finance. Her sudden death in a car accident in 1982 froze her forever in the public imagination. The elegant young princess who had once been a girl from Philadelphia. For women who grew up watching her films, Grace Kelly is not simply a historical figure. She is a memory. And that 10.48-carat diamond is still cited decades later as the benchmark for what a ring given in genuine devotion looks like. Queen Sonja of Norway, The 9-Year Wait. If Grace Kelly's story is the one the world fell in love with, Queen Sonja of Norway's is the one that feels most true. Sonja Haraldsson grew up in a middle-class Oslo family. Her father owned a clothing shop. She trained as a dressmaker, studied at the Oslo Vocational School, and later completed a degree at the University of Oslo. She met Crown Prince Harald in 1959 at a party, and for 9 years, they conducted a largely secret relationship in the shadow of a tradition that expected heirs to marry princesses, not shop owners' daughters. King Olaf V hesitated for years. Harald eventually told his father that if he could not marry Sonja, he would not marry at all, effectively placing the future of the royal line in the balance. In August 1968, the king relented. Their wedding in Oslo Cathedral was widely covered on Scandinavian television and became a national moment of catharsis. An acknowledgement that love and personal conviction could finally, outweigh the old dynastic rules. For much of her early married life, Sonja worked quietly in the shadow of a powerful king and a sometimes skeptical public, raising 2 children and slowly building her own role in public service and the arts. When Harald became king in 1991, she became Norway's first queen consort in more than half a century. And then came the emeralds. The Norwegian emerald parure tiara began life in the French imperial court, created by Parisian jewelers for Empress Josephine's granddaughter. It passed through several royal women before landing in the Norwegian royal collection. Despite its long history in Norway, Queen Sonja was the first queen consort actually to wear it, pairing it with its matching emerald and diamond necklace and earrings. In portrait photographs from state banquets, the tiara's towering emeralds frame her face like a laurel wreath. A visual acknowledgement, quiet but unmistakable, that the once controversial commoner had become the living embodiment of Norwegian royal history. Some rewards, it seems, only arrive after decades of waiting and steady, unshowy service. Queen Silvia of Sweden, the Olympic meet-cute. In 1972, a young woman named Silvia Sommerlath was working as a hostess at the Munich Olympics, greeting athletes and dignitaries in the sky-blue dirndl uniform created to promote Bavarian culture. She had been born in Heidelberg to a German father and a Brazilian mother, had spent much of her childhood in São Paulo, and had trained as a multilingual interpreter at the Munich School of Interpreting. She was poised, professional, and entirely unaware that among the dignitaries she was welcoming was Sweden's Crown Prince Carl Gustaf. They met during those games. Over the next 4 years, their relationship deepened quietly across the boundaries of rank and nationality. In 1976, as king, he asked her to marry him. Their wedding in Stockholm's Storkyrkan on the 19th of June, 1976, was the first marriage of a reigning Swedish king since the 18th century. Silvia became queen consort and devoted much of her energy to advocacy, particularly for children and against sexual exploitation, eventually speaking so forcefully on the subject that she publicly criticized Sweden's own laws in a rare television interview. The jewels that mark her reign are extraordinary. The Leuchtenberg sapphire parure began life as a wedding gift from Napoleon to the Duchess of Leuchtenberg and came to Sweden with Queen Josephina in the 19th century. It includes a grand sapphire and diamond tiara, necklace, earrings and brooch, and has been worn by generations of Swedish queens at coronations, state banquets, and Nobel Prize ceremonies. Today, it is one of Silvia's signature sets. The deep sapphires glittering against her evening gowns at the Nobel festivities, echoing the medals worn by the laureates around her. Then there is Queen Sophia's 9-prong tiara, a tall, spiky diamond piece, notoriously heavy and difficult to wear, which Silvia has chosen again and again for Nobel banquets and royal weddings. In press photographs, it has become almost a visual shorthand for the Swedish crown itself. A dramatic diamond halo above dark hair, symbolizing both continuity and the personal stamina required to carry such a literal weight of history. A woman who once greeted strangers in a dirndl at a sporting event. Now, one of Europe's longest-serving queens. Queen Mary of Denmark, the pub in Sydney. Here is the anecdote that stops a scroll. Mary Donaldson grew up in Hobart, Tasmania, the daughter of an academic. She built a career in advertising and marketing in Australia and the UK. During the Sydney Olympics in 2000, she went for a drink with friends at a pub called the Slip-In. There, she struck up a conversation with a friendly man who introduced himself simply as Fred. She had no idea who he was. When she later discovered that Fred was Crown Prince Frederick of Denmark, heir to a 1,000-year-old monarchy, she reportedly assumed it was a joke. It was not a joke. They conducted a long-distance relationship largely under the radar for a year before Mary moved to Europe, learned Danish, and embraced the demands of royal life. Their 2004 wedding in Copenhagen introduced viewers to a poised, softly spoken bride who was very evidently not born into court life, and who clearly did not need to be. Her most famous jewels are the Danish ruby parure, originally created in France around 1804 for Désirée Clary, Napoleon Bonaparte's former fiancée, who later became Queen of Sweden. The set travelled from Sweden to Denmark with Princess Lovisa in the 19th century and became a favourite of Queen Ingrid. On Ingrid's death in 2000, she left the parure to her grandson, Crown Prince Frederick, with the wish that it would stay with the future queen. Mary first wore the rubies for a pre-wedding gala in 2004 and has since made them her signature, working with jewellers to subtly redesign the tiara and its accompanying necklace and earrings for comfort and to suit her own style. In televised gala portraits, the deep red rubies and diamonds frame her face, visually linking a Hobart-born marketing executive to the Napoleonic court and to generations of Danish queens. After Queen Margrethe II's abdication in 2024, Mary became Queen Consort and gained access to even more of Denmark's treasures, including the towering Pearl Poiré tiara, a cascade of pear-shaped pearls formerly worn almost exclusively by Margrethe. When she debuted it on a 2024 state visit to Norway, commentators noted that seeing Mary in this traditionally queenly jewel made the transition of the crown feel fully real. A chance meeting in a Sydney pub, 1,000 years of Danish history, and rubies that once belonged to Napoleon's former love. Queen Máxima of the Netherlands, she thought he was joking. There is a pleasing echo between Mary's story and Máxima's. When Máxima Zorregieta met the future King Willem-Alexander at a party in Seville in 1999, he reportedly introduced himself simply as Alexander. She initially assumed his claim to be a prince was a joke. Máxima had been born in Buenos Aires in 1971, the daughter of an agricultural engineer. She had studied economics and built a career in international finance, working for firms in Buenos Aires, New York, and Brussels. She was, by any measure, a woman who had made her own way in the world entirely on her own terms. Their relationship matured amid controversy over her father's political past, but Máxima's personal warmth and evident competence helped win over a Dutch public that was initially wary. When Queen Beatrix abdicated in 2013 and Willem-Alexander became king, Máxima became the country's first Argentine-born queen consort. She has access to one of Europe's most formidable jewel collections, and she is famed among specialists for her bold, imaginative way of wearing it. The most spectacular piece in her rotation is the Stuart tiara, a towering diamond creation built around the 39-carat Stuart diamond. Once worn by 19th-century Dutch queens, it had not been seen in decades until Máxima revived it in 2018 for a state banquet in the United Kingdom. That is the thing about great jewels. They wait. They sit in vaults, in darkness, carrying the weight of the women who wore them before. And then someone with the confidence and the vision to reach for them brings them back into the light. Máxima reached for the Stuart tiara, and the room, by all accounts, stopped. Catherine, Princess of Wales, the ring that carries everything. There is one jewel in this entire story that requires no introduction. You know it the moment you see it. Catherine Elizabeth Middleton was born in 1982 and grew up in the village of Chapel Row, the eldest child of Michael and Carol Middleton, who had both worked for British Airways before founding a successful party supplies business. She attended the University of St Andrews in Scotland, where she studied art history, and where she met a fellow student named Prince William, second in line to the British throne. Their relationship, tracked eagerly by tabloids for nearly a decade, culminated in a proposal in 2010 during a trip to Kenya. At the announcement in London, Catherine's engagement ring caused almost as much excitement as the news itself. a large blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds, instantly recognizable to anyone who had watched the news in 1981 as the same ring once worn by William's mother, Diana, Princess of Wales. The ring, designed by Gerard, features a 12-carat oval Ceylon sapphire surrounded by 14 solitaire diamonds in a white-gold cluster. William chose it, he said, as a way of making sure his late mother was part of the day when he and Catherine married. Their wedding at Westminster Abbey on the 29th of April 2011 was watched by hundreds of millions worldwide. Catherine wore a lace gown by Sarah Burton for Alexander McQueen and the Cartier Harlow tiara, a diamond scroll piece made in the 1930s, originally a gift from King George VI to his wife, later the Queen Mother, and also worn by the young Princess Elizabeth. After her marriage, Catherine began to wear some of the most storied jewels in the Windsor vaults. The Cambridge Lovers' Knot tiara, a diamond and pearl piece created in 1913 for Queen Mary, later became one of Diana's signature pieces, seen throughout the 1980s and 1990s at state banquets and film premieres. In the 2000s and 2020s, Catherine wore it at multiple diplomatic receptions, its swinging pearl drops framing her face in images that deliberately echo earlier photographs of Diana. 3 generations of women, 1 sapphire, 1 tiara, and a thread of love and loss that runs through all of it. Queen Camilla, the long road to Westminster Abbey. If you watched the news in Britain in the 1990s, you know this story. You lived it in a way, and whether you feel warmth or complicated feelings about how it unfolded, you watched. Camilla Shand was born in 1947 into a comfortably upper-class but non-royal family. She came of age in Britain's post-war debutante scene and met the young Prince Charles in 1970. Circumstances, royal duty, and the inexperience of youth drew them apart. Camilla married Andrew Parker Bowles. Charles would later marry Lady Diana Spencer. Decades later, their renewed relationship, conducted against the backdrop of 2 failing marriages, provoked one of the greatest crises of the late 20th century monarchy. For many women of her generation, however, Camilla's story is more complicated than the tabloid version. A narrative about first loves, wrong timing, unhappy marriages, and the painful work of rebuilding a life in middle age. After both divorced, Charles and Camilla slowly re-emerged as a couple, making their first official public appearance together in 1999 and eventually marrying in April 2005 in a civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall. The late Queen Elizabeth II signalled Camilla's gradual acceptance by lending her significant pieces of family jewellery, including the towering Greville tiara, with its honeycomb lattice and diamond clusters, which had passed from socialite Dame Margaret Greville to the Queen Mother and then to the Queen. On the death of Elizabeth II in 2022, Charles became king and Camilla Queen Consort. For their joint coronation in 2023, she wore Queen Mary's crown, an early 20th century consort crown altered for the occasion, its arches lowered and some of its stones changed. It was the first time in recent history that an existing crown, rather than a newly commissioned one, was used to crown a consort, a gesture Buckingham Palace described as sustainable and historically grounded. Queen Mary's crown links Camilla to another consort who married a future king after a long wait and had to win over a skeptical public. Mary of Teck, who married the future George V after the death of his older brother, her original fiancé. For those who followed the Charles-Diana-Camilla saga in real time, images of that crown being placed on Camilla's head in Westminster Abbey carry a weight that is difficult to articulate. The culmination of a story that began in the clubs and drawing rooms of the early 1970s. 50 years, compressed into a single moment. Crown Princess Mette Marit of Norway, the second chance. And then there is the story that is perhaps the most honest of all. Mette Marit Chessum Høiby grew up in southern Norway in a middle-class family. In 1997, she had a son, Marius, with a man who had a criminal conviction. She was a single mother when she met Crown Prince Haakon at a music festival. When their relationship became public, Norway was sharply divided. The tabloid scrutiny of her past was intense and at times brutal. Less than a week before their 2001 wedding, Mette Marit and Haakon held an extraordinary press conference. She acknowledged that she had lived what she called a youthful rebellion and condemned drug use, asking for understanding and space to grow. It was an act of public vulnerability, almost without precedent in royal history. And it worked, not because it was a performance, but because it was clearly not one. Their wedding in Oslo Cathedral combined traditional Lutheran solemnity with a very modern emotional honesty. Over the following decades, Mette Marit built a reputation as a compassionate crown princess, particularly after revealing in 2018 that she had been diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis, a chronic lung disease that has sometimes forced her to scale back her duties. Her wedding tiara, the diamond daisy bandeau, became the visual emblem of her acceptance into the royal family. A gift from King Harold and Queen Sonja, it is a delicate row of diamond daisies set on a band, light, floral, and quietly beautiful. Jewelry historians note that its design suits both her youthful image at the time of her marriage and the more reflective, understated role she has taken on in later years. It is not the most spectacular tiara in this story. It is not the most historically significant, but it may be the most moving because of what it represents. A second chance, a family's welcome, a woman who stood in front of cameras and told the truth, and was given a crown of daisies in return. 8 women, 8 different paths to the same extraordinary destination. None of them were born to this. All of them chose it, or were chosen by it, and then did the quiet, difficult, often thankless work of becoming equal to it. The jewels they wear are not trophies. They are conversations across centuries between the women who wore these pieces before and the women who wear them now, between history and the present, between who a woman was and who she became. I find myself wondering sometimes which of these stories resonates most with you. The 9-year wait, the pub in Sydney, the press conference in Oslo, the sapphire that carries a mother's memory. Tell me in the comments, I genuinely want to know. And if this kind of storytelling, the history behind the history, the human beings behind the crowns, is what you come here for, then a like on this video helps more people find these stories, and subscribing means you won't miss what's coming next. Because there are more vaults to open, more stories waiting in the dark.